Alright, today we are doing chromatography and forensics. Starting off, what we need to do is weigh out the mobile phase for the ink, which is a 50 to 10 mixture of 1-butanol of 95% and ethanol and water. Measure out roughly 10 milliliters. Make sure that you have this number set up. And once you have that there, you can go ahead and pour that into your beaker. Cover that and allow that to sit for a couple minutes to allow the vapors ample time to fill the chamber to help along with this process. While the chamber is filling up with the vapors from the mobile phase, I'll go ahead and we can set up our TLC plate, having the written in pencil about 1 centimeter, just roughly, line from the bottom, and then properly label with the 4 spots that we will be spotting. Taking care not to press too hard with the pencil. And the smaller these dots, the better your TLC plate should turn out. Right, with the beaker with your mobile phase in a hood, go ahead and you can take the lid off of the beaker, and with your TLC plate, go ahead either with your fingers or with tweezers, very carefully put this into the jar so that the bottom is touching the mobile phase. Replace the jar on top and allow 30 to 40 minutes for the plate to develop. When the mobile phase line is at the correct, has traveled up the plate height to an appropriate amount, go ahead and take off the lift, and either with your hand or with tweezers, go ahead and take the plate out and make sure that you mark down the solvent line first thing with a pen so that you can accurately calculate your RF values and allow this to dry. Just a video of the same thing, just a little closer so you can actually see the solvent line, pencil, and it's starting to dry. When you are done with the sample, go ahead and take off the lid. Remove the plates with tweezers and go ahead putting down a paper towel. Put the paper towel down and mark the line at the top. Once the TLC plate has dried, go ahead and using a ruler, find the spots. Find the RFs for each spot indicated here. In part 2, we'll be using a different mobile phase, particularly for the amino acids. We'll be using 1-propanol water mixture, 723, using just about 10 milliliters of the solution as well. Make sure to write down the number that you use into your ELNs. Go ahead and pour this into your beaker and allow for a few minutes for solvents to fill the beaker. While the solvent or the mobile phase is filling the chamber, we can go ahead and get our TLC plate ready. Very similarly to part 1, we want to make sure we have our 4 spots labeled very lightly in pencil with our evidence, the suspect that we will be assigned in class, and 2 amino acids that will also be assigned for us. Now, the major difference between part 1 and part 2 is that when we are spotting our TLC, that unlike the ink samples that had color, these will be clear. After these samples dry, we will not be able to see anything for them. So make sure that while you're there, try to make sure that the sample, the dot size is very similarly to what we are aiming for this first sample. With the beaker with your mobile phase in the hood, go ahead and you can take the lid off, and then either with using your fingers or with tweezers, go ahead and carefully put in the TLC plate for part 2 in a similar fashion that you did for part 1, being very careful that it touches the bottom and that you put it in a very even fashion. Replace the lid and allow the appropriate amount of time to pass. Once the solvent has gone 60 to 80% up of the plate, we go ahead and we can take this out with either tweezers or with our fingers. From here, putting it on a paper towel to dry, and immediately draw the line very faintly with your pencil where the solvent has gone up to, so that we may accurately calculate RF values for the spots. Now we will allow the plate here to dry, and once it has dried, we will go ahead and put this in the oven. Once the TLC plate for part 2 has dried, go ahead and give that to a TA, who will then spray that with the stain. And this will dry before then going into the oven. The TLC plate is then put into the oven by the TA. After 2 minutes, the sample is removed from the oven. And you can see that spots have formed on the TLC plates that are purple. Once the sample has come out of the oven, go ahead and you can look at your TLC plate and mark off the RF values for each. For this plate, it's a little interesting. There must have been some solvent of swooping, as I like to call it, as you have A2 goes to belongs to this one, A1 for this amino acid, your sample spots, and then your evidence.